Good day wishes to you all. So we will start discussing about the cloning strategies with respect to the curriculum of genetic engineering. When we use the term cloning, a clone is a group of genetically identical cells derived from a single cell. So in literal sense, the gene cloning means to make many exact copies of the gene. Now we know that a gene is a stretch of DNA which codes for a function. Say for example, a gene for ribosomal RNA, or it could be a protein such as the simple one, the insulin. It includes the coding sequence as well as the regulatory elements, that is promoter, operator, etc. Now, the gene cloning can be achieved by two different approaches. Number one, cell-based approach, and number two, polymerase chain reaction. If we just look at or try to understand the purpose of the cloning strategies, the gene cloning has three main purposes or objectives. Number one, to obtain a large number of copies of a desired gene or segment of DNA. Number two, to obtain protein product of the gene in large quantities. Number three, to obtain genetically modified organisms. If we start discussing about the three main purposes of gene cloning or objectives in detail, we will understand the scope or the relevance of these three purposes or objectives. To begin with, number one, to obtain a large number of copies of a desired gene or segment of DNA. So, in order to study genes in the laboratory, it is necessary to have sufficient quantity or the concentration of the DNA for analysis. It could be determination of the sequence, that is the determination of the precise order of all the base pairs in the gene. Now, what is the outcome? The sequence determination allows us to study the structure, function and regulation of the gene. So, this is one important objective. That is, if you obtain large number of copies of the desired gene, so you will be able to perform or carry out studies that elucidates the structure, function and regulation of the gene. Number two, to obtain protein product of the gene in large quantities. The cloned genes also make it easier to study the proteins they encode. Now, cloning a gene which encodes a desired protein may allow the gene to be overexpressed so that the protein can be produced in large quantity or in bulk. We know that many important pharmaceutical products are produced from cloned genes. To name a few, number one, insulin, two, interferon, we have clotting factors, human growth hormones, cytokines, that is the cell growth stimulants, and several anti-cancer drugs. Similarly, gene cloning is also used to produce enzymes used for recombinant DNA research, such as restriction endonucleases, DNA ligase, DNA polymerases, etc. And many enzymes of industrial importance, such as proteases, amylases, lipases, etc. So the proteins or enzymes can also be genetically engineered to alter their properties. So this is the second main purpose or objective, that is to obtain protein product of the gene in large quantities. And number 3, to obtain genetically modified organisms. We know that cloning allows engineering animals, plants and microbes. So the ability to create genetically modified animals and plants, referred to as transgenics, it has led to the use of these transgenics for the purpose of research as well as for therapeutic and commercial purposes. So the technology may lead to the development of new therapies for the treatment of diseases, more specifically the gene therapy. So these are the 3 important objectives or main purposes the gene cloning fulfills. And as I said earlier, the gene cloning has 2 approaches. Number 1, cell-based approach, and number 2, polymerase chain reaction. In this discussion, we will be concentrating on cell-based approach. In the cell-based approach, a vector is required to carry the DNA fragment of interest, that is gene of interest, into the host cell. Now, what is the host cell? A host cell is a cell in which the vector carrying the gene of interest can multiply. So the DNA fragment or gene of interest is isolated from an organism such as the plant or an animal, and then it is ligated to a vector molecule to make a recombinant vector or the DNA. So the vector molecule is also known as cloning vehicle, all synonymous. Usually bacterial plasmids and viruses are used as vectors for cloning genes in bacteria. The recombinant vector which carry the DNA fragment, now it is then introduced into the host cell, and we know that E. coli is the most commonly used host organism, though other bacteria, plant, yeast or animal cells can also be used. As the host cell multiplies, now what happens? The recombinant vector carrying the desired fragment, that is DNA fragment or gene, also multiplies. Now you require basic tools for the cell-based gene cloning approach. 3 important tools. Number 1, the restriction enzymes. Number 2, the vectors. Number 3, the host. Now, what are the important features or the special characters a vector should possess? We will be trying to understand about the vectors, a basic tool required for cell-based gene cloning approach. So we will be discussing about the vectors in detail. Here in this slide, it is shown that the vector should be autonomously replicating. That means these are the important features or a desirable features that a cloning vector should have. It should be autonomously replicating. That is, it should have its own origin of replication. We call it as ORI region. Number 2, it should contain at least one selectable marker. Could be for any of the antibiotic resistance. Number 3, it should have unique restriction enzyme site. Number 4, it should be preferably small in size for easy handling. And number 5, it should be or it should have relaxed control of replication so that multiple copies can be obtained. Right. So these are the desirable features a vector should possess. Now vectors are of different types depending on the host. There are bacterial vectors, yeast vectors, plant vectors, and animal vectors. We will discuss each one of them in detail. To begin with, E. coli is supposed to be the most commonly used bacterium for the purpose of gene cloning. And vectors, that is number of vectors used for clone, there are number of vectors available for cloning in E. coli. And these vectors are categorized as plasmids, phages, cosmids, phagmids, and bacterial artificial chromosomes. For the cloning of any molecule of DNA, now what is necessary when we start to clone any molecule or any fragment of the DNA? It is necessary for that DNA to be incorporated into a cloning vector. And then these DNA elements may be stably maintained and propagated in a host cell or the organism for which the vector has replication functions. So we saw that a typical host organism is a bacteria, most commonly used. And it is the E. coli which is preferred for the simple reason it grows and divides rapidly. Thus, any vector with a replication of origin in E. coli will also replicate efficiently. So this follows that any DNA cloned into a vector will enable the amplification of the inserted foreign DNA fragment and will also allow any subsequent analysis to be undertaken. Now, if you just recollect the PCR, so this is, or in this way, the cloning process resembles the PCR. In PCR, we see the amplification. In cloning, we are also amplifying or multiplying. So the cloning process resembles the PCR. But there are some major differences between the two techniques. By cloning, it is possible to not only store a copy of any particular fragment of DNA, but also to produce unlimited quantities of the same. So this is the major difference between the cloning process and the PCR. That is, by cloning, it is possible to not only store, that means you can store a copy of any particular fragment of DNA, and you can also produce unlimited amounts of the same. Now coming to vectors, the vectors used for the purpose of cloning a gene vary in their complexity. They vary in ease of manipulation. They vary in their selection. They do vary with respect to the amount of DNA sequence they can accommodate. That means we call it as insert capacity. Insert capacity refers to the amount of DNA sequence a vector can accommodate. That is insert capacity. So the vectors used for the purpose of cloning vary in their complexity, ease of manipulation, their selection, and insert capacity, that is the amount of DNA sequence they can accommodate. Vectors have been developed, that is from general perspective, they have been developed from naturally occurring molecules such as the bacterial plasmids, bacteriophages, or combinations of the elements that constitute them, such as cosmids. Right? For gene library constructions, when we speak about the library constructions, there is a choice and a trade-off between various vector types. When you look for a specific vector, the first feature that has to be taken into consideration is the ease of the manipulation needed when your objective is to construct the gene library. And second one, the insert capacity. That is the vector's maximum foreign DNA insert size capacity. If you just look at this table, you will understand. It is a comparison of vectors available for cloning DNA fragments. We have M13 up to yeast artificial chromosomes, and the vector structure is also given, and you can concentrate mainly on the insert size. That means the range of the insert size given in kilo base pair. So thus the vectors with the advantage of large insert capacities, they are usually more difficult to manipulate. So now you can understand which type of vector is easy to manipulate from the table and which type of vector is more difficult to manipulate. Apart from, no doubt, there are many more factors to be considered when manipulation comes into picture. Right? Moving on to different types of the vectors, we will begin with plasmid derived cloning vectors. Many bacteria, they contain an extra chromosomal element of DNA, which we term it as plasmids. So this plasmid is relatively small covalently closed circular molecule. And this carries genes for antibiotic resistance, conjugation, or the metabolism of unusual substrates. And some plasmids, they are replicated at a higher rate by bacteria such as E. coli, and we call them as excellent potential vectors. So if you look at the history, in the early 1970s, a number of natural plasmids were artificially modified, and they were constructed as cloning vectors by a complex series of digestion and ligation reactions. And one of the most notable plasmids, which is termed as the PBr322. So this is named after its developers, Bolivar and Rodriguez. That is P, plasmid Br, Bolivar and Rodriguez. This was adopted, and the desirable features are illustrated over here. Number 1, the plasmid is much smaller than a natural plasmid, the most desired feature. The plasmid PBr is much smaller than a natural plasmid, which makes it more resistant to damage by shearing and increases the efficiency of uptake by bacteria. We call this process as transformation. Number 2, the bacterial origin of DNA replication ensures that the plasmid will be replicated by the host cell. Right? So some replication origins display stringent regulation of replication, in which the rounds of replication are initiated at the same frequency as cell division. So PBr322 is no different. Most plasmids, including PBr322, have a relaxed origin of replication, and activity is not tightly linked to cell division. Thus, the outcome is the plasmid replication will be initiated far more frequently than chromosomal replication. So what is the use? A large number of plasmid molecules will be produced per cell. So this is the most important desirable feature of plasmid derived cloning vectors, that is PBr. The two genes encoding or coding for resistance to antibiotics have been introduced. So this is the third desirable feature. So we have two genes coding for resistance to antibiotics which have been introduced, and one of these allows the selection of cells, transformed cells, which contain plasmid. So when cells are plated on a culture medium containing an appropriate antibiotic, only those which contain plasmid will grow to form colonies. The other resistance gene can be used for the purpose of detection of those plasmids which contain inserted DNA. Number 4, fourth desirable feature. There are single recognition sites for a number of restriction enzymes at various points around the plasmid. So these points or the restriction sites can be used to open or linearize the circular plasmid. So as you are seeing, it is a circular plasmid, and it contains single recognition sites for many number of restriction enzymes. So it is not one site for one enzyme, one site for several restriction enzymes. That is the most important feature. So this can be used to open or linearize the circular plasmid. Now, why you have to linearize? Linearizing a plasmid allows a fragment of DNA to be inserted and then the circle can be closed. So the variety of sites not only makes it easier to find a restriction enzyme which is suitable for both the vector as well as the foreign DNA to be inserted, but since some of the sites are placed within an antibiotic resistance gene, the presence of an insert can be detected by loss of resistance to that antibiotic, right? This process is known as insertional inactivation. So when the gene of interest is inserted at a site within an antibiotic resistant gene, then there is a loss of resistance to that antibiotic. This is termed as insertional inactivation, right? So moving further, we have the plasmid selection systems. Insertional inactivation is very useful selection method for identifying recombinant vectors with inserts, because your insert is placed at a site where the antibiotic resistance gene is, and the observation is there is loss of resistance to that antibiotic. So it is very useful selection method for identifying recombinant vectors with inserts. So for example, a fragment of chromosomal DNA digested with BAMH1 would be isolated and purified. Now the plasmid PBR322 would also be digested at a single site using BAMH1, after which both samples would be deproteinized to inactivate the restriction enzyme. Now BAMH1 cleaves to give sticky ends, and so it is possible to obtain ligation between the plasmid and the digested DNA fragments in the presence of ligase, that is T4DNA ligase. Now the products of this ligation will include plasmid containing a single fragment of the DNA as an insert. But there will also be unwanted products such as the plasmid which are recircularized without an insert, or it could be dimers of plasmid by itself, fragments joined to each other, and the plasmid with an insert composed of more than one fragment. So most of these unwanted molecules can be eliminated during subsequent steps. And the products of such reactions are usually identified by a simple technique, that is agarose gel electrophoresis. Now the ligated DNA, now it must be used to transform E. coli. Bacteria usually they do not normally take up DNA from their surroundings. So this is a very well known fact. But you have to induce. When induced to do so by prior treatment, that is by addition of calcium at 4 degrees centigrade, this uptake is possible by the bacteria. Now these cells are then termed or called as competent cells, since DNA added to the suspension of cells will be taken up during a brief increase in temperature, which we call it as heat shock. Small circular DNA molecules are taken up most efficiently, whereas long linear molecules, so they will be taken up less efficiently by the bacteria. Now the plasmid DNA can also be introduced into bacterial cells by electroporation. Even that is possible. What happens in electroporation? In this process, the cells are subjected to pulses of high voltage gradient, causing many of the cells to take up the DNA from the surrounding solution. And we know that this technique has proved to be useful with not only bacterial cells but also with animal, plant and microbial host cells. Right? So with that, I'll stop my today's session over here. We can continue our discussion in the next session. Thank you very much.